Virtue was a new wave of British heavy metal band founded in 1983 in the English town of Oxford. The two founding members were brothers, and Tudor Sheldon would go on to take the role as a lead vocalist, while his younger brother, Matt Sheldon, would go on to play the guitar. Tudor Sheldon explains in an interview that Matt was really the guy who started the band. The brothers lived with their mother in an old farmhouse, and Tudor explains that the house used to be lived in by the 60s group The Traffic, which their mother liked. Later on, they were influenced by bands that their older brothers would play, like Black Sabbath, Free, Bad Company, and Mountain. Eventually, Matt would get an old beat-up acoustic guitar that he started playing at 13 years old, and he's completely self-taught. In 1982, he would go on to purchase the Killers album by Iron Maiden, and soon Tudor was into that kind of music too, so he bought the first Maiden album and also the EP Made in Japan. Then, the brothers started buying loads of other music that would go on to influence them, such as Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath and albums by Saxon and Judas Priest. Tudor further explains how Matt formed the band with some friends at school, and they rehearsed at their father's home with Boss Beast, who would later go on to become their rhythm guitarist. When Tudor was 17 years old, he approached Matt to form Virtue, and they formed the original lineup with 3 friends from their school. This first lineup of Virtue would feature Tudor Sheldon and his brother Matt Sheldon, but also Adrian Metcalf on guitars, Brian Reeder on bass, and Ian Lewington on drums. 1 year after their formation, the band would go on to record their first demo, titled Defenders. The band wasn't very happy with their first material, and therefore the entire band almost split up. The entire lineup was revamped, and the only original members were the Sheldon brothers. As far as my knowledge goes, unfortunately the original demo doesn't seem to be available to the public. This would birth the second Mark lineup of Virtue, which, apart from the Sheldon brothers, would consist of Boss Beast on guitars, Darren Prothero on bass, and Simon Walters on drums. This lineup would go on to release a single, which they recorded at Matinee Music in Reading. The single was, of course, We Stand to Fight, which was recorded and released in 1985 on the Other Records label. The single was played quite a bit on radio, and it was sent to various labels, and among them were EMI, which showed some interest in the band. However, the band was unable to sign a contract. The A-side of the single would feature the title track We Stand to Fight, which was written by both brothers, while the B-side would feature the track High Treason, which was only written by Matt Sheldon. This is in many ways a very impressive release, and let's listen to a few parts of the A-side. The powerful and energetic vocals, combined with the very driving drums, makes this a great opening track. And I think the dual guitars are very impressive, and one of my favorite parts of the song is this sort of descending bridge that goes into an epic solo. Let's take a listen. and the B-side track High Treason is stylistically a perfect follow-up track. The pressing of the single sold out, and the release was followed by a number of local gigs all across Oxfordshire. The band continued to record material, and they were planning to release the EP titled Fool's Gold, and this was to be released on Hatchet Records. Due to a numerous amount of problems, the label was unable to release the EP, and therefore the band released the EP as a demo on cassette in 1987. This cassette would feature the 3 tracks Fool's Gold, Hideaway, and Seek and Destroy. Musically, the band would continue in the same direction with those speedy dual guitars and powerful drums and vocals. Let's take a listen to a few parts of the 3 different tracks on the cassette. The release of the Fool's Gold cassette in 1987 would be followed up by even more gigs. The lineup would also change when Darren Prothero, who played bass, would leave the band and be replaced by Bob Duffy. This new lineup of the band unfortunately proved to be short-lived, as the band broke up in 1988. "We were just kids, we didn't know really what we were doing," says Tudor Sheldon. Tudor further explains that they were looked at by EMI, but they didn't have a manager, and this also coincided with EMI losing money on another band, and it was really the end of the boom of new wave of British heavy metal. Therefore, Tudor thinks that EMI got cold feet for signing new bands. After this, the band went their separate ways, and Tudor had a career in finance. At the same time, Matt and their drummer Simon Walters were writing new music, but Tudor wasn't into that, so the band ended. Some unofficial re-releases of the single has been made over the years. For example, one in Brazil in 2003 and a very limited edition one in Sweden in 2012. Getting a hold of the original single today is pretty much impossible unless you have a huge budget, because the cheapest one on Discogs is currently listed for about £900. In the interview I've referred to, Tudor Sheldon states that his brother Matt sometimes sent him links of the original single going for around €80 on eBay, which he found pretty funny. This was in 2013, so the price has gone up drastically. In 2013 came the first official band release since 1987. Tudor explains that they were contacted by Chris Papadatos of No Remorse Records, who had the idea of releasing the original single along with the Fool's Gold demo, and he was given permission to do so. There were a total of 6 different variations of this release, ranging all the way from big box sets to splatter vinyl. In 2025, 6 additional releases would be made, with 5 of them being different variations of vinyl, while one of them was CD. This time around, there would be even more interesting kinds of vinyls, for example a picture disc and a liquid-filled vinyl. In 2026, yet another version of vinyl would be released, this time limited to 200 copies. Tudor says he is still in contact with most of the band members from the second lineup. Boss Beast has moved to New Zealand and therefore Tudor has lost contact with him, but Matt still works with him and he keeps in touch with the several bass players that Virtue have had. Simon Walters, who was their drummer, is still a friend. Tudor says that they are all good friends and that they tend to hang out with each other from time to time. When being asked if they will ever reform again, he says that they get asked to reform quite a lot, and recently they have been asked to perform at a couple of festivals in Europe. He says that the other band members would like to reunite, but he is the one who normally stops it. I've not sang a word for 25 years, probably a good thing, and know it would take a lot to get match fit to present any material to a paying audience, but never say never. This interview was back in 2013, and unfortunately no reformation has happened yet. Their future is unclear, but nevertheless, fans around the globe will continue listening to their music. So, the answer to the question about if we will ever get another release or a reformation is simply, only time will tell.